Good evening. I'm Michael Reddy. This is a Family Energetics free evening. It's number 9 or 10. I'm kind of losing count. I'm going to talk to you tonight about my ability and your ability to interpret natural symbolism. I think it's important in life. It's important in constellation work, obviously. And it's important when cats visit us too. That's one of my main totems, so there you go already. I want to tell you a story of something that happened to me in graduate school to start out. Well, you know what? No, first let's go around the, give us a hello and one word for how you're feeling tonight. Sandy, go for it.
You want me to start? Is that what you mean?
You just say hello and you give us a word.
Hello. Awesome.
Okay. Linda C.
Hello, and I can't think of a word. Looking forward to being here.
That'll do. Kat.
Hi, I'm Kat, and I feel lively today.
Cool. Marie.
Hello, yeah, I'm feeling fairly lively for the time of evening because it's 12:30 at night. But I went to sleep just for an hour or so, and I ended up sleeping for 4 hours. I couldn't believe the time when I woke up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us from Great Britain in the middle of your night.
That's okay.
Linda H.
What am I supposed to say? Hello, and
if you have
I'm feeling wonderful.
All right, great. That's good. Okay, so once upon a time, there was a boy in graduate school named Michael, University of Chicago, and he got divorced, I think, after maybe in the middle of his second year, third year of graduate school. And the summer after that, he had to live in this little apartment, and he was not very happy at all. His ex-wife was living in the apartment that they had put together, and he was going to move back to it in the fall, but she had it in the meantime. And so in order to stay sane, Michael sat down and decided to write a book, to not do his graduate work that he was supposed to be doing and write this book. And the book was the story of a canoe trip that he had taken with not his wife, and another couple up near the border of Canada in the Boundary Waters area of all these lakes up there, right? So you get a big canoe, you get these big, huge port packs, you paddle through a lake, you come to a portage, the guys have to put the canoe on their shoulder, walk over these rocky things and get to the next lake, and then you have to come back again and grab the packs. It's a three trips across each portage. And on the way up there, we saw this dumb John Wayne movie called True Grit, which was when he was old. And it was about, grit, And I wrote this book 2.5 times. I wrote a first draft, then I wrote a second draft, and then I was partway into a third draft and actually typing it, because I was just then learning to write on a typewriter. I had never written on a typewriter. I had only written things out longhand and then typed them, because that's what we did in those days. This is like, what is it? This is like 69, 70, something like that. So by the second time through this, I was trying to write a novel, and I was sticking very close to the narrative of what happened on this canoe trip, and I was starting to notice that I didn't have to. It was becoming a symbolic novel, and I didn't have to make up any of the symbols. It's like, as I wrote through this, the symbols were already there. It was the strangest thing. I mean, in what happened to us and the names of the lakes and, I had never looked at a segment of my life that way before. And there was one story I'll tell you briefly. At one point, we came out of a big lake that was, on a overcast day, and we had to go north through 3 small lakes that were called the Cones, C-O-N-E-S, Cones. And somehow the water level in these lakes had risen or something because there was no shoreline. So these were the most desolate things, and for canoers, you're kind of always keeping track of like where you might, if there's a big rainstorm, where you might go and pitch a tent or things like that. And each one of these lakes was worse than the last. And there was this big thunderstorm threatening, and we were in the last of the witchy, we called them the witchy cones right away because they had this desolate feeling. There was something really, I don't know, almost scary about them, especially compared to the lakes we'd been in, which were like very welcoming and beautiful. And so we, by 3 o'clock or something in the afternoon, we were in the last of the cones, and facing us was the longest portage of the whole trip. It was almost half a mile long, and it went up 400 feet and down 400 feet. So that meant going, a half a mile with the canoes and the ladies carrying one set of packs, coming all the way back again, everybody grabbing another great big pack. So it was 3 times over this thing. And this is not easy territory, and these canoes are 60 pounds or so. I couldn't carry one anymore now. So we got into this last lake and started frantically looking for a campsite because it was pouring down rain. I mean, it was really pouring down rain, really bad. It was a cloudburst. And we found the best place we could, which was, it was a disaster. There was barely room to pitch the tents. There was dead stumps all over the place. It was really scary. And we were about as miserable as you could possibly get. And so we were facing the choice of having a horrible night spent in this place here, or what were we going to do? Were we going to do the longest portage of the whole trip in the slippery rain, up 400 feet, down 400 feet, a half mile each way, right? At the end of a day when we were already tired, or not? And we had this little conference, and there was this curious maxim about, it became one of my big truths about life. It's like, well, it's going to be dangerous and really painful to do this portage right now. But there's some chance at the other end of it, it might be better than this. If we stay here, it's going to be really fucking miserable all night long. We can't even hardly pitch the tents. We're not going to be able to hardly cook or, So we got our stuff together and we decided that we were going to do it. And we got our spirits up and we trudged up this thing and down and put the canoes and packs down and all the way back over again and then all the way back again. Nobody slipped, nobody fell. And we got into a long lake that, like, the portage went this way and then this long lake headed north again. And when we got into this lake, the rain stopped and the sun came out. And we were like, oh. It was so, and we went up to the top of this lake and there was another little portage. And then we got into this enormous long east-west lake. And the sun was out and it was beautiful. And over on the left side of the lake, very quickly we saw what we called the Long Lake Hilton, the best imaginable campsite that anybody ever could think of. It had a long point sticking out with a beach and it had picnic tables and it was gorgeous.
Wow.
And we camped there. We stayed there a whole day afterwards, 2 nights. And that night, it was clear as a bell, and the stars came out. And I just remember, I remember looking up at the sky and just feeling so so at home and so open, and so it was just so beautiful. And there was this huge lesson, like there's the pain of moving forward, and there's the pain of holding still. And a lot of times in life, you're faced with this, especially in serious healing. You're faced with this thing of, you know, if you hold still, the pain isn't going to change. It's going to hurt to move forward too, but that might go away, right? So this particular thing became like a big thing, and this whole story for me, I mean, I couldn't believe it by the time I started the third draft of it. Like the conversations we had, the names of the lakes, what happened to us. It's not all fresh in my mind right now, but I had this sense of this material opening downward into a vista of, you could call them symbols or whatever, but it's like this experience was talking to us. This experience was trying to teach us things. This experience was, and it was the first time in my life I ever had this sense of, holy shit, this thing's alive. You know, it's not an it out there. And it was, I also found a hatchet, you know, which is a small axe, right? It was rusted. It was sitting at one of these campsites. And in the metal, it said True American was the brand name of this thing. And I took this as a gift from the forest, you know. And at the time, I even thought, yeah, who are the true Americans, you know, not us, the natives. And it was, so if this was, it was almost 18 years later before I apprenticed to Native Americans and started becoming a shaman. But in some sense, this was the genesis of that whole experience. So a lot of you, I don't know how you feel about it, but you know, back when I was in graduate school, people felt like they didn't know how to read symbols. You had to get a book to tell you what your dreams meant and things like this. And those of you who've been in my classes know that I am always trying to teach people that, you know, it's not that objects, which I call object persons, it's not that things don't have meaning. They got way more meaning than you know what to do with it. And you're so used to ruling it out. You're so used to narrowing it down to some sort of literal thing that you don't notice. So, and the language itself, human language itself is just, it's full of conceptual metaphors. It's, you know, all of our abstract terms are based on our embodied experience of the world. You know, spirit meant breathe in Latin, and up means all kinds of things, and down means all sorts of things. Next 2 weeks from now, I'll be talking about the meanings of things around your body, which I call social geometry. And without that, constellations wouldn't work at all. If it didn't mean something, that somebody was standing with their back to their goal, you know, that one rep was standing in, the rep for the client is facing and not even looking at the rep for the goal, all right? Or that parents are not looking at their children, or you know, that stuff only means something by virtue of the fact that all the spaces around your body are metaphorically meaningful. So a lot of you have, so I have this game to play here, and it's something that those of you in the classes haven't seen. So I wanna have you help me play this game of unpacking some symbols. And what we do when we unpack symbols is we just look at, you know, what's their shape, what's their size, what's their color, what's their function, where did they come from, what's their personal history, what's their cultural, there's just a lot of basic concrete questions out of which meanings arise constantly. So, how are we doing at the moment? That's a lame attempt to get people to talk. You can see I'm tremendously skilled at this. All right, so let me do a screen share. But I mean, how many of you sort of already get what I'm trying to say here? How would you put it in your own words? See, I do know how to do this. All right, I know how to
Field
try.
is alive with the sound of music.
Okay, that's beautifully metaphorical. It is. It is. All right, so let me do the screen share. All right, so you should be seeing some stuff here, right?
Yeah.
Everybody. So I want to talk to you about the symbolic and the meanings that are potentially symbolic of some basic shapes. So we got a sphere here, we got a cylinder, and we got a cube, right? And I want to do this popcorn thing. I want you guys to help. I want you to just look at the top row and start talking about how these things behave differently in the world. What are they, what kind of characteristics do they have? Just as these shapes, just imagine them we're not down on the second row yet with these things, which are embodiments of these shapes, but we're up here. The sphere, the cylinder, and the box. Talk to me about how they behave in the world. Does that make sense? Does the question make sense?
I'm not
Yeah,
quite sure what you mean.
Well,
Sorry, I'm not-
the sphere rolls around in any direction.
Okay.
The cylinder rolls only in two directions, forward and back, if it's orientated differently.
Okay.
And the box doesn't roll at all.
Okay.
You can
So-
put things
so-
inside the box.
Okay, wait, let's hold on to there. So this is really positionally unstable.
Yeah.
If something doesn't, if things aren't perfectly level, or if wind is blowing on this or not, it's not going to stay put. Both of these will, except that this has one orientation in which it's positionally unstable too, but only in one dimension.
Yeah.
Right? What else? Anybody?
All of them are 3D, right?
Say it again, Kat.
All of them are 3D.
Yes.
They're classic kind of shapes.
I'm sorry?
They're classic shapes.
Yes, they are. And the reason I want to talk about them is because if you do home altar or tabletop constellations, you use something other than figurines, you're going to see stuff like this.
But you could say that two of them could tip over.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can put something inside the box, or it's empty.
If it has one open side, you can put something in it, right? I mean, it's as a cube, it might not have one. This one particularly does.
Yeah.
One has corners and the other two don't.
Okay. Strength.
All three of them have soft colors.
Yes, they do. You're now into their other characteristics, but yes, you're right. Size, shape, color, but I'm really only concerned about the shape here and its natural characteristics.
None of these particular objects have a face, although
Okay, that's important. Expand on that, please.
well, the box, there may be some kind of mark on, if you had an object that had a kind of mark on it, the box may look like it has more of a face if one side is, say, prettier or something like that.
So it doesn't have it doesn't have a favored directionality, right?
Yeah.
So if it was representing a person, if that box was representing a person, you wouldn't know which way that person was facing,
Correct.
right? What about the cylinder?
Same and same for the globe.
Okay, that's actually, you know, when things that are, I mean, in a lot of the home altar example constellations that I've used, there have been things that were either circular, like, you know, one dimension circular, or actually spherical, and they're very strong, but you don't know which way they face. That sphere is the strongest shape of all because it diverts all the forces evenly in all directions. You'll notice that the box, if you punch the box in the middle of one of its faces, that's its weakest point. If you punch it on its corner, you're liable to get your hand hurt. It's strong there. But the sphere, it's the strongest. It holds it's the shape that contains the most for its size. It's got the biggest volume of anything in its size range. The cylinder, does it have weak and strong faces? Does it have weak and strong sides?
Different characters to the round or the flat top.
Which is stronger, the round or the flat?
The round.
Yeah, I mean, if the material is the same in all
Yeah.
of those, then, and so if you see old style fortresses and things like that, a lot of times you'll see these things sticking out of the corners that are rounded, and they're rounded because cannonballs, you know, will have the hardest time getting through them.
Yeah. Because
Okay,
something
so-
to do with something to do with the geometry of that, isn't it? That it's almost like it's exuding a force in more than one direction, and therefore it's harder
It
to.
absorbs the force and propagates it along the edges in a very, very nice way. The circle and the spheres, they support whatever point something impacts in the best way imaginable. Okay, take that box now. Imagine that it is open. There's 3 different orientations that are different, that mean different things.
Say that again.
That here we have the yellow box, right?
Yeah.
It's open on the top, right?
Yeah.
That could be positioned has three different orientations.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
What are they, and what are they telling us?
Well, I'm hogging the show, so I'm going to shut up.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, you're kind of used to this, and so maybe people.
Yeah.
Can you give us a clue?
Yeah. All right, Izzy, go ahead and talk some more.
Okay, so you know, if the opening is up like it is in this picture, then you can put something in it and it would be contained within that. But if you put it on its side, say, facing us, that's a different orientation. But you could still put something inside, but it can more easily get out because it's on the same level as its base. Or you could put it up, turned, so that the open side is on the base, and that would mean you kind of can't put anything inside it, although you could put it over something.
Okay. Those are 3 different. I mean, in this, you get this in constellations if you have a seashell or something. Like a clamshell, you know, it's a very different thing if that clamshell is, you know, hard part up, or if it's turned concave upwards, right? And that's why the shellfish built it, was to be defended and protected and non-receptive from, you know, when it puts its soft side next to the whatever, to the ground or rock or something, it's not receptive and it's very well defended.
And you could actually, with the cylinder, if the cylinder happened to be open at the top, then the same would go for the cylinder.
Yeah.
In 3 directions.
Yes. So when it's like, as we're seeing it right now, there's a number of ways to abstract from these characteristics. It's receptive to the upward direction, right? It can receive and take in things from the top. If you put it on one side, it can receive and take in things from any of, you know, whatever direction that opening is facing. I see them sometimes in constellations acting like antennas. Somebody is a conch shell, conch, depending on where you live in the United States anyway, is that beautiful spiral shell. And that shell can have the opening downward. It can have it sideways, or it can stand on its spiky end and have it up like this. And you know, the inside of it is beautiful and pink and almost vaginal, and the outside of it is spiky and hard and not repulsive but repelling of energies. So you come along in a constellation with object people, you know, object persons. They're not things to me. So you'll hear me, and people in my classes are used to me talking about object persons. But if that yellow box is my client, and it's rotated so that the opening is facing some direction, and that direction is facing towards grandmother, and grandmother has a whole lot of trauma, then I'm going to be alerted to the fact that it's, you know, that it's possibly acting like an antenna. You understand me? And that it's receptive towards, or has received, or taken in, or now contains those energies. If that hole is completely downward, it's closed off. We don't know what that goal, that person. But you see what I'm doing here. I'm just now looking at the characteristics of these 3 shapes. Make sense?
Yeah.
You notice there's sort of no natural way to open up the sphere. If you opened up the top of it and started to pour water into it, it would probably roll away or something. It's not that easy to use it as a container. Okay, so that was really just about these shapes. And if we look at some embodiments of the sphere, now we've got more stuff to work with. So, you know, what kind of a sphere is it? What's it used for? What comes in contact with it? What history does it have in your life? What cultural meaning does it have? So now I want to ask you to please play the game of unpacking that little row there. Actually, let me just come away from this one and see. Okay, I stopped the share. So what kind of sense is this making to you folks? Might not be. I mean, I don't know. Where are we? Tell me, you know, I need to know what you think enough to orient what I say to be helpful.
Well, I'm not saying anything because, of course, I've done too much of your things, so it's, of course, making sense for me. So pass it over to the others. Come on, everyone.
Yeah, but for those of you that are just being first exposed to this, what the heck sense does this make to you? Why would anybody want to talk about this? Just tell me if you don't see why.
I see why, and I find it fascinating. And I haven't done a lot of constellations with objects like that, but I did one once where one of my clients grabbed a bag, and I thought it was fascinating, and we did focus on it, so it came very naturally at school.
Okay, thank you. What do you think, Linda H? How are you doing?
Oh, I thought maybe I had, well, I've got a small amount of experience, nothing like Izzy's. I like it because you've moved from your personal example where you realized that the things that were happening to you in life actually had another significance. And now you're helping us to look at things in life and see what sort of language they could be speaking. And we don't get that out of physics or however we might look at those things. These things speak to us, just like there was a video of an Aboriginal climbing to the top of, we've got a theoretically extinct volcano near here, and he said he climbed to the top of it, was doing a video, and he said, as an Aboriginal, part Aboriginal, he looks at the land and he listens to it. And as he listens to it, it will speak. And he just had such a lovely mood of warmth around him as he said that. You can't listen out of your head, but you can listen out of a feeling and a heart, and something else happens. And that's, so even through those objects that you had there, you only get it if you're sort of feeling into it and seeing how it touches you in some other way.
Thank you very much. That was super eloquent. That really was. I used to sit and see when you say something, then that helps me to say something interesting. I used to, I was trained in shamanism for 7 years, and I sat in a lot of circles where we were sent out into the woods and supposed to have some experience, come back and talk about it and things like that, and a lot. And people would come back and they'd say, the tree told me to, the tree talked to me, the tree told me to end my relationship with so-and-so. And if you and that sounds like, whoa, it grew a mouth and it like said, oh, well, don't have any relationship with that guy. And in most cases, that's not what happened at all. But when people dress it up in human language, it sounds like, what really happened in a lot of cases for most people, and can happen for you very easily. You don't have to be clairvoyant or anything. You're walking along, or you're sitting there thinking about, what am I going to do about this relationship that's confused and I don't know whether I should go on with it or not. And all of a sudden a wind blows, a dead branch falls out of a tree, right? And it hits the edge of a wastebasket in the park, and part of it goes in a wastebasket and part of it falls on the ground next to it. And it was just one of these sort of synchronistic events. Now, most people will just look right past that and not be at all aware of the fact that that might be a sentence. Did you follow me? And there are, most of the mainstream people in the world are going to say, well, you're crazy. That was just an accidental coincidence. That's the blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you from long, difficultly learned experience that it pays to pay attention to stuff. That's how these things talk most of the time for most people. Yeah, I know some people do hear voices, and I've sat in circles where people would say, there's 3 spirits over there by that tree, and I believe them, that's fine. I'm just a guy who gropes along getting symbols and feelings, if that makes sense. Maybe we're going to pause a second. Hey, Red. I read. Red. Yeah, unmute for a second and talk to me. He's driving me crazy.
I'll just message him to tell him to stop moving around. Shall I?
Yeah. Red, if you're going to be moving around so much, please mute your video. Because it distracts the hell out of us. We're like, I'm going to get dizzy and vomit here. That's all. Just mute your video and you can still see us, and you can unmute it if you want to when you get some stability. Now you notice I just made a metaphor. Possibly an inappropriate one, but all right. So what I'm trying to help you start to do and see is to, it's a funny thing because it's not like everything that goes on all around me all the time is doing this, but you get a funny thing that, oh, my attention was drawn to this rock, or I don't know why, I just looked over here and saw that, and I happened to be thinking about this or feeling this, and as that happens more and more, you start to notice, have a certain kind of felt energy around certain events that your attention gets drawn to. And, you know, the test of this is unpack the meaning that seems to, you know, potential meanings that are there, and then see if they're useful to you. That's what it all comes down to. I came into this very much an intellectual, former PhD, you know, well, I'm still a PhD, but a former academic. And I really was pretty damn skeptical about the whole thing. But over time, it made more and more sense to me that, you know, no, I needed to pay attention to this stuff because I lost out if I didn't.
To me, I mean, I know you're talking about everyday life, Michael, there, but, you know, in particular, when I'm facilitating in a group, actually, even if it's privately, I literally, and that's why I used that phrase before, the field is alive with the sound of music, because I often say the field is alive, and I explain to my clients, oh, that dog barking down there, that dog never barks. The fact that that dog's barking, what's that dog? Yes. What is that dog barking for you? Yes. You know, and sometimes in the middle of a group constellation, I've literally had the entire weather change within 10 minutes from a sunny day to a torrential storm that was not predicted anywhere. And then we all ended up on a boat like generations ago. I couldn't work out why all the representatives were swaying initially. And then I realized we were all on a boat. And, you know, it's just like keeping your perception wide open for anything that grabs your attention. Oh, this is grabbing my attention. Okay, what is that? Whether it's an object or whether it's an animal, you know, cats and dogs that normally leave us alone in the constellations, they want to get in the room. Okay, what's that? It's just being wide open to the possibilities of whatever is grabbing your attention.
Thank you. That's another beautifully said thing. You will also, if you do this, you'll have a certain kind of felt sense of what's meaningful and what isn't. You know, I have, like, I'll get kind of little, not literal voices, but I'll have things get said in my head. You know how your thoughts are coming to you in words at times. And I realized after a while that when they felt frantic, and I eventually came to associate them with a bunch of crows clawing at me. And I learned not to pay too much attention to or trust too much the things that came with that sort of frantic stuff. That the only way I have of describing, because I'm an empath and I have sourceless information. I don't know where the hell it comes from. It's just there in a lot of cases. And over a long period of time, I've learned that it's important to pay attention to it. It's not that it's gospel truth or anything. You know my whole analogy of we're picking symbols like flowers. We collect a lot of flowers and we don't rush to put them into bouquets. Collect a lot of them and we see which ones fit together. And then the ones that fit together go together, and the other ones, you know, we put them aside. They're not part of the interpretation. But the feeling that I have around some things, I don't know how to describe it. It's like deathbed certainty is the best words I have. I have this feeling that if I was on my deathbed and I had to trust this, I would trust it. If I was about to go into the great beyond, right? If my life depended on it, I don't know where this came from, but I would trust it. That's my wording for it. Anybody have something else like that? I do want you to talk. It's so much cooler when you guys, you know, like we've had some wonderful comments, and then that gets me doing the right stuff instead of just, you know, jawing at you about abstractions. We're going to go back to those pictures in a minute. And I have more stories to tell you, but I like it. Michael loves questions. Michael loves comments. And the other big saying is spirit trumps Michael. Whatever Michael says to you, if spirit says something else, you follow spirit. Come on, Linda.
Just following on from what Izzy said before, as she was talking, I realized this is the mindset that most of us have most of the time, which is what you were referring to, Michael, of the laws of nature. And we know how things are supposed to be. And if they're not how they're supposed to be, then we know we don't have to take any notice of them. But actually, when things aren't how they're supposed to be, that's the mindset that allows for the fluidity that things will come to us differently encoded, and if we don't allow for that different coding, then we're going to miss a whole different language, and that's where we are sometimes struggling to step out of the linear reductionist. This is how things are in this box. There's two laws. We can feel safe here, and anything else is unsafe. But it's not about safety. It's about coding and language, and that's quite different.
Thank you again. Another beautifully expressed bit of wisdom there. You know, what I'm doing here is what scientists, mainstream reductionist mechanistic scientists call the pathetic fallacy, which means attributing, you know, consciousness, attributing human qualities to inanimate or animal or plant things. And I mean, the truth is the mechanistic worldview is just profoundly limiting. It really rules out, I mean, the oldest, honestly, animism, which is the belief that the world is alive, conscious, and talking to us, dancing with us. That's the oldest form of spirituality on the planet. I mean, our whole thing is like a couple hundred years old, this mechanistic thing, 300, 400 years at most. I'm personifying, but I'm being very scientific about it because I'm paying attention to the results. I'm doing exactly the same damn thing that the scientists do, which is I'm experimenting like mad. I'm paying attention to things. I'm trying them out. If it works, if it helps me predict, if it helps me do the right thing, I'll pay attention to that kind of stuff again. Do you follow me? That's what you need to do too. But what I hope you come away from this little discussion with is this realization that, you know, I can hold up this thing and it has a miraculous wealth of symbolic meaning associated with it.
It has a face.
Where do you even start, right? What is it connected to? What does it look like? What is it used for? Who does it belong to? What's its personal history with me? Right? All of that stuff. And you can abstract all of that stuff. Do you understand what it means when I say that? You can make all of that stuff, you can widen the meaning. So when I say, if we go back here again, if we go back to this, you know, Izzy described that this box here could contain things, and that's true. I abstracted that and, you know, talk now I'm not thinking just about containing water or dirt or toys or something. I'm talking about containing somebody else's feelings. Do you see what I mean? That's what I mean by abstracting it. Okay? So here, now we got 3 spheres here. Each one of these spheres has a bunch of differences that are not to do with the spherical shape, but with other things. So what happens when we start unpacking the meanings of these? What are these? What are the functions of these? What happens to these? How do these get used? What happens to what is the 2 things that happen to the baseball all the time, or 3 if you want?
It gets thrown.
Gets thrown.
It gets hit.
Gets hit.
It gets caught.
There you go. That's the baseball. Okay. Does that happen to the soccer ball?
Mm-hmm.
Only one person gets to it. It gets kicked, and most of the people aren't even allowed to touch it with their hands.
Yeah.
Only the goalies can touch it with their hands, and they bounce it off their heads. And people tend to see, I'm doing it all for you, and I don't want to do that. You know.
No, I'm trying not to too.
People in the world, the soccer ball to me, and one of the immediate overtones of the soccer ball to me is people get violently involved in most of the world with their, you know, national championship soccer teams, and there have been riots. And now, can you imagine that happening in a baseball game?
No, but there's a massive difference between a soccer ball that, as much as it might incite violence between people, you can't kill someone with a soccer ball. You can kill someone with a baseball.
If you hit them hard enough, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard ball. It's not a softball.
It's not a softball. It's a hard ball.
And yet the game of soccer is a violent game. And so it's not surprising that it incites riots. Because you're kicking.
Well,
And
baseball, you're hitting things with a stick, so there's that too. But you're right, I think. The kicking is somehow stronger.
because you've got tackling, you've got group things happening. And as you talked about, with the soccer ball, because you've got a group of people, you've got 2 packs. And so we have our mirror neurons, as you have referred to. In fact, that's been said elsewhere. For instance, when we watch violent video games, we are inclined to become violent. And so, yeah, it just makes sense. You don't have that same tendency in baseball or cricket, for that matter. Cricket's a very civilized English game. You bat the ball with great force, but it's not a pack game.
Cool. Thank you. You're right. So the baseball gets caught, thrown, and hit, basically, most of the time. Soccer ball gets kicked, hit with the head, right? Only a couple people can hold it and throw it. Everybody else can only touch it with their feet or their head or their chest, right? Soccer's a curious game to me. This restriction of the hands is fascinating. Okay, now
Well, one more thing about the soccer ball, because although it might incite violence, it actually brings groups of people together as well in a very tribal kind of way.
Yeah.
Which, although incites competition, within that group itself can be an aligning force.
Yep. But I mean, that's kind of true for all three of these, right? Maybe more.
Yeah,
so.
okay, maybe. Well, yeah. Okay, true.
Right. So we got the things. What are the main things that can happen to the soccer ball and the baseball? What are the main things that happen to the basketball?
I have to try and shut up.
No, the reason you're not talking is that this is too simple.
Slot into a basket.
Yeah, that's the one that's really different. Well, I mean, it's kind of a little bit similar to kicking the soccer ball into a goal, but the baseball has nothing like that, right? You're not hitting for a target or anything. Basketball gets thrown into a hoop. What else? That's like the baseball.
Gets thrown.
Gets thrown. And if it gets thrown, then it gets
Caught.
Caught.
caught. And then there's one more main thing.
Dribble.
It gets bounced.
It gets bounced. Right. So if we saw in a constellation a basketball or a soccer ball as opposed to a baseball, two of them bounce. One of them doesn't bounce much, doesn't bounce well, doesn't bounce the same way at all. It's not elastic like that. If you drop it on the floor, it thuds, and there might be a little bit of a spring back, but not much.
Well, it's got a lot more speed.
You mean if it's hit?
If it's hit, yes. It's
Sure it does.
quite a fast ball. You don't get that same momentum with the other two, or it's quite a different quality. Oh, okay, that's partly because it's a bat, but it's also dense and small.
Now, all I'm trying to do here is help you start to just take the normal stuff that happens to this and start noticing what it is and comparing these things, and then, realizing that they can become symbolic in a constellation or symbolic in your interaction with life. We have in this house, my partner and I walk around this big block, and there's this great big high school up on a hill, and there's a baseball field up there. And when they hit home runs, the baseballs go over the fence and come down onto the road that we walk on. So even though I don't like baseball at all, I have two baseballs in my wood shop that I keep because I know they're home runs. And they have a sort of special energy about them because I know they got knocked over the fence, right? Somebody was very happy about this, right? Somebody did something really cool. I mean, the pitcher might not be so happy, but you see what I mean? Okay, so now let's just look briefly at the cylinder here.
Michael, could I make a very small comment? Perhaps having an English...
Do you even have to ask?
Yeah, well, I'm interrupting you. Perhaps having an English background, when I look at that baseball, I also think of cricket, which is very English,
Yeah.
and quite a different kettle of fish in its own way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very different. I don't understand it at all, frankly. But I've never actually watched it, or Okay, so now let's go to this cylinder. So the bottom, we have two. So we took the sphere, and we now looked at three embodied spheres, and all of those have the basic characteristics of the sphere. They're unstable in terms of position, right? They're very strong Okay? They don't have a face. You see what I mean? But they have additional stuff. All the stuff associated with what they're made of, what they're used for, how big they are. If you had a baseball in a constellation on, like, say you have a constellation with objects on the floor, which is the way I do most of mine. If I have a baseball out there, it's a sphere, but it's a lot. If I had a soccer ball out there, it's going to be a lot bigger. And that relative size difference is going to probably be meaningful because it's probably going to be one of the biggest things on the floor. If it's the soccer ball, it's got these hexagons and it's polka dotted with hexagons. And there's something very geometric about that. So if that was a person, I might be thinking, you know, I might pick a symbolic blossom that says, you know, maybe this person is, I don't know, somehow precise or mathematical or has regularities or something. And these are just blossoms. Do you understand me? Not doing anything with them yet. I just put them in my basket and wait to see if I see three other things that point to the fact that this is a former, you know, this is grandfather and he was actually a mathematics professor, and you know what I mean? He is quite strong and he doesn't like to let you know his feelings. Now I've got a bouquet. Do you see what I mean? And the hexagons that are there on the soccer ball, there, you know, those different blossoms are coming together. So I just wanted you to also see the picture in the middle of the bottom, or the right hand picture. What the heck is that anyway?
A trash can.
No, the one next to it.
Oh, cement
Oh.
pipe.
It's
Yeah, like
what?
a sewage pipe or a gas pipeline or a...
All right, so what's different about the, you know, this is like a whole different function that we haven't really talked about at all yet. If both ends of the cylindrical form are open, then what have we got?
A tunnel?
The light at the end of the tunnel.
A tunnel. We've got something that fluid can move through, right? We've got a channel, possibly a channel for feelings. If I saw a pipe like this between two people, you know, object person people, I would be wondering what goes through that channel.
A whole lot of shit, because you could also think that it's intestines.
Yeah, you could. You could.
And it could be incomplete because what function does it have just like that? There's another portion that's missing.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. Now we're starting to play the game here. Notice that it preserves its positional instability. There's nothing to stop that thing from rolling around. It only rolls in, it's a one-dimensional positional instability. Whereas the sphere is two-dimensional, right? It can go anywhere on the plane, any direction that there's a tilt or a push. Go ahead.
And it has somewhat of a crab-like property because its face, it kind of has two potential faces.
What's the you're talking about? I got lost.
So the cylinder.
Which one?
Oh, sorry, the pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
It appears possibly to have two faces, like either end.
Yeah.
But it moves sideways to its face.
Yeah.
So you know how like a crab looks one way and then it moves that way.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It's just
I get
interesting, kind of.
It's also much longer than it is wide. So if it was between two, you know, if we have a thing to the right of it and a thing to the left of it, it may serve as a barrier. It's a certain kind of a barrier. It's a barrier that might roll around, might roll over one of the people. You see what I'm doing? All I'm doing is just, I'm looking at the natural, that's...
Would that be a bit like moving the goalposts, if it's a barrier that can move?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. All right.
But one could transfer through it though too. You could transfer through it potentially.
Yes, all of that. What's it made out of?
Concrete.
What, you know, how big is it?
Couple of tons.
Yeah, pretty big. What it's made, what color is it?
Gray.
Yeah. See, all those are blossoms you can pick. Okay? You know, we could have a shape like that that was a flute. Be pretty much the same shape. You follow me? An opening at both ends. Obviously, there's some other openings or clarinet, or, you know, there's some other things going on. But topologically, it's still just a tube. So it still has the basic characteristics of the cylinder, but we're just now adding a lot of stuff. And all that stuff is, you know, it's a handmade Native American flute. It's one with a certain history. It came from a certain person in the client's life, and it was given on a certain birthday, and it lives over the mantle in a special place, and any of that is potentially symbolic. Any of it.
You could think of an ear or a megaphone or things like that as well.
Yeah. Well, that's another basic shape I could have put on here, but I didn't have a lot of time. Is just the cone, which is the cylinder that, you know, comes to a point, basically. Which is either a funnel or a megaphone. Okay. Emily, how are you doing, if I may ask? Unmute yourself.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Good.
Okay. If you have background noise, you can mute again at school.
Yeah, I have.
So, Sandy?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you think of all this?
I wasn't expecting you to ask me.
I know. Sandy is my wonderful, fabulous administrative assistant, without which very little would happen, but I like to do this.
I think it's very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, in conjunction with the unpacking of the symbols, you know, from home altar constellations. And
let's all stop for a second and regard Red's picture. That's Hawaii. And he's showing us his backyard and the surf, and this lucky guy goes out there and swims with whales and takes pictures of beautiful women. And
that's a gorgeous view, Red.
There you see the surf out there breaking. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a cloudy day in Hawaii. Not overcast, but not maybe a little overcast. So here we are. We got Great Britain, Australia, Hawaii, and some places in the U.S. here. California.
Canada.
Canada, yes, right. Where are you, Emily?
I'm from Chicago, Illinois.
Right. I knew that. I just didn't remember it. Thank you.
Am I unmuted?
You are now.
You're just unmuted now. Hello.
Okay, I had a choice. You could look at the background or you could look at me. I thought it'd be better to look at waves.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well,
sorry to bother you.
Oh, no.
The thing is, when you're moving, you know, when you're moving around a lot, it's just pretty distracting. That's all. But this is beautiful. I love it.
I didn't realize that I was unmuted when I moved around.
Well, it's the video, not the audio. You know that, right?
Okay.
It's the video that you need to mute. If your picture is wildly crazy or you're doing something like scratching your ass or something, it's best to mute the video.
Can you hear the waves?
You can see them.
Yeah,
I
I
can
can't
see
hear
them. I can't hear them. No.
Okay.
Oh, here's a hint for everybody. You can, if you right click onto anyone's picture, you can pin the video to them. So I just right clicked on Red so that I could get a nice big picture of the background.
Ah.
Wait. Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, isn't that great?
cool. Okay, thanks, Sandy.
Look at that. That's lovely.
You see my hammock stands?
Yes, I
2
do.
hammock
Yep.
and my
Wish I could
coconut.
occupy one of them.
That's my coconut grater.
Wow.
I make fresh coconut milk every day.
Oh,
And that's a big ball there, just like we were talking about.
I'm sitting on my ball.
You're what?
I'm sitting on my ball. I'm bouncing.
Yes, okay. I got it.
You have another ball.
I
I
got it.
have one a couple feet away over here.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to go back to gallery.
Sorry for distracting everybody.
oh no.
Nice distraction.
We needed a holiday. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like very cool. Now, okay, so read this symbolically, my friend. What has come into our little conversation here all of a sudden?
An amazing view, an amazing perspective,
Of,
beautiful nature.
yeah. Of that thing that I'm trying to tell you is alive and conscious and can talk to you. So maybe that's why it showed up. You see what I'm doing now. I mean, you can, I'm not. There's an art to this, and it's something that you need to. Again, you pick certain blossoms, they make bouquets, and you test out whether it works or not, whether it's helpful or not. It's not like every single thing that happens in the, I sort of believe in a sense that, there's this idea of holism, that the world, the universe is in a grain of water, or grain of sand, or whatever, this everything's inside of everything. I mean, I have this feeling that, and I've actually had that experience on mescaline a couple times, where I just looked around me and everything that happening, I could just see that everything around me was an expression of my interaction with some consciousness around me. A very, very big consciousness. One that can be very scary to feel like this thing is looking at you. It's like, oh boy, I'm about yay big. And this thing is looking at me, and it is powerful, and it is all around me. Okay, so now I just want to talk about slow intuition for a minute, and then we're moving towards the end here. One of the reasons that, I got really interested in home altar constellations is that they don't all necessarily happen in one sitting. I mean, the classic prototype home altar constellation goes on for days or even a few weeks. You have a dedicated space, you set up your constellation, and you visit it. You visit it however many times a day, depending on how busy you are. You commune with it, you feel into the players on it, and it's called an iterative process. Iterative means that the output of your previous visit becomes the input for your next visit. And you go away from it enough that your subconscious can work on it. You sleep on it. All right? The rule for visiting home altar constellations is to visit it often enough that you're not just, you've been away so long that you can't remember and you're rebuilding meanings, but not so often that you're getting frantic or pushy or things like that. And I have this thing called slow intuition. People ask me what something means, or they ask me, well, here's a good example. So I did a constellation, a brand new constellation for a person whose parents came from Europe, were, you know, pushed out by World War II, and there was I went a foot. There was here's the deal. I bought my brand new 32-ounce water bottle. I was very proud of it. I thought it was totally cool, and it had thick rubber around it, you know. And I went downstairs to my place to do the constellation, and I had the water bottle, and I set it down on the floor, and I noticed that it went down just maybe a tiny bit bumpy, but not much. And it had, you know, that much, you know, it had that thick rubber around the bottom, so I didn't think anything of it. And we start the constellation, and I'm starting to realize, oh boy, there is a lot of pain in this family. There is a tremendous amount of sadness, okay? And, you know, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes into the constellation, I noticed that my feet are sitting in a puddle. Somehow, a hairline crack appeared in the bottom of my 32-ounce water bottle, and the water was slowly leaking out. And I had to literally stop the constellation for 5 minutes and go get towels and take the water bottle and put it in the sink and whatnot. And I said to the person, to the client, I said, I think there's a lot of tears in this family. There's a lot of sadness. There's just a lot of stuff here, right? Okay, that was the immediate reading. And it was very accurate, just, you know, given the work that we did over 2 hours with that family. It was the first constellation with a complex family history of persecution, immigrations, some trauma of other kinds, right? And a client who was carrying a lot of that stuff for the ancestors who never had a chance to process it. So, okay, so fine. So that's good. That's the first flower, the first blossom that got picked from that. But there's this thing called slow intuition. So I let my subconscious or my guides and my guardians or whatever you want to call it, my guidance, I come back to these things again, just like I come back to home altars. And I call this slow intuition. And with me, slow intuition works a heck of a lot better often than my first take on things. Somebody asks me a reading for a dream or something, they'll tell me the dream and I'll I don't know, come back in a day. But very often the next morning I'll wake up with a couple of, you know, blossoms, symbolic blossoms, and very quickly they'll turn into a bouquet. And then pretty soon I've got a reading, not the only one, but I've got a reading for that dream. Wasn't there before. I am deeply trusting of slow intuition. And by trusting slow intuition, by going away and coming back, it's gotten to where my quick intuition is a hell of a lot better than it used to be. So later in the day, when I was back not being Michael the facilitator, because when I'm Michael the facilitator, you know, I get in, you all know this if you're coaches or healers. I mean, you put your own troubles aside, you know, you get into a certain state, you hold the space, sacred space for the client, you know, you're smiling and cheerful or whatever's appropriate, right? But I was actually having a very hard time over that 3-day period because I'm somebody who still works on myself and I got stuff going on. And it was later in the day that it dawned on me, because I don't think that, I didn't crack that thing. It cracked. The energy cracked that bottle. I couldn't even see the crack. I returned it and I said there was a hairline crack in the bottom, got my money back, you know, so I could buy another one. I don't think that I touched the floor with that nearly hard enough to break it. I think the energy broke it. And at first I thought, oh, well, it's the energy of this family. But later in the day, I was like, oh my God, Michael, what are you thinking? You're sitting there with your feet you know, in a puddle of water. It's all around you. You didn't, you know, it emerged without you even, and you think you're not flooded too, right? It just suddenly was like, oh, no wonder it cracked. It wasn't just the family, right? It was me. I was basically flooded a lot of the time at that 3-day period, right? I had a lot of old stuff coming up, and it's hard to stay separate from it sometimes. If you do this kind of work, you know that. What we're trying to do mostly with our clients is to help them bring enough of this old pain or terror or fear or whatever up that they can process it, but not so much that they lose their present day selves, right? Which is called flooding, or Freud called it op reactions and stuff like that. So that's what I kind of mean by slow intuition. Slow intuition is great. Come back to things. You know, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. When I used to, when I was, you know, 30 years ago, when I would write, if I got stuck, I would push against the stuckness. And it was useless. It was a waste. I would spend 3 or 4 hours getting some stuff that 3 days later I would think, that wasn't so good anyway. You know. Now I just put it away. I even put it away for 20 minutes and do something else and come back to it. Because once you pose certain questions for your subconscious, a lot of stuff happens. You know, you can say that connections get made. I say my guides are helping. We are moving towards an understanding of the human brain and mind that says that there's really only one mind. There's really only one universal intelligence. And what, you know, all this whole set of neurons and things up here is basically a transmitter and a receiver that doesn't, you know, all your memories are not in your head. So dip into that well. And slow intuition, patience. And again, the blossoms metaphor. I'm going to write a blog about that soon for the NASCON site. You know, about, because I think it's better to talk about picking blossoms and putting them in a basket and letting bouquets form. That makes a lot more sense to Americans than saying something like preserve the phenomenological stance. I mean, Americans don't know what that means, and I'm not sure Europeans necessarily do either. But the blossoms, now you notice again, what am I doing? I'm just using natural symbols. A constellation or your life, you're just these perceptions of interesting events that somehow feel portentous, either big portentous or just little portentous. You pick them like blossoms, you carry them around for a little while, and you see what forms bouquets. And the bouquets typically will form. You know? You can go into it with this idea that, you know, I'm going to make a bouquet of roses. So I'm only interested in roses. And okay, maybe you are, that's fine. But that's sort of the top-down approach. I'm more interested in the self-organizing approach that just says, oh, there's one, and and what have I got here? Well, 2 of these really don't fit, but the others are awesome. And one's a lily, and one's a petunia, and one's a whatever. But look at the color scheme and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so last comments from anybody here?
Very useful, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to look not only at constellations, but just to look at life from a different lens, right? This was good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't think that you can't work with symbols. Everything has hundreds of characteristics and interactions, color, size, shape, history, function. Blah, blah, blah. All you have to do is start enumerating those things and then letting them generalize a little bit. And you have all the richness you could imagine. You know? Take anything, you know, right? Anything. Oops. I messed up there, wait. You know, like this, you know, it doesn't matter, anything.
I've done a constellation in a cafe using knives and forks and serviettes and a pepper and salt shaker and a flower in the middle of the table, and
Yeah.
just what you pick is so symbolic.
You know, I'll say one more thing. I keep saying that. You think of this as a thing and like an object, right? These are big words now, so watch out. This is really an equivalence class of perceptions and interactions.
Nice.
Because if I can't do it with this, but if I do this, if you look at this, it really doesn't look anything like this. If you see a quarter on edge, it's just a little straight, tiny little thing. Then you turn it and it's an ellipse, and then you turn it and it's a circle. All those perceptions and all the possible interactions, what you can do with that thing, right? That's a quarter. It isn't really an object at all. Object is just the way the English language tends to make us think about it. And then don't forget the fact that this thing is busy decaying. This is just a really slow process. Come back 500 years from now, and this is gonna, I don't know what it's gonna be, but you know. Okay, so next time I'm gonna build, 2 weeks from tonight, I'm gonna kind of build on this and talk about social geometry, which is my term for the amazing and very important symbols that come from spaces around the human body. What does it mean to be in front of something, or facing something, or alongside of something? Above you, below you, all right? There's a lot of stuff there, and the truth is constellations wouldn't work without all that, those metaphors. I don't know anybody except for me in my book that's talked about it that way. But that's because I came out of cognitive science and worked on metaphor. But that's why, you know, meaning arises from constellations only because the postures and orientations of people towards one another in a setting like that, they're full of meanings.
And we get that in social situations if we pay attention.
Say it again.
We get that in social situations if we pay attention.
Okay, what's that we get?
Oh, like, you know, if somebody's got their back to us, and it's like, you know, it's like, means something.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have all sorts of expressions in the language that arise from that stuff too.
Yeah, they turned their back on me.
Yeah, or someone's got my back. I mean, in American English, that means see your back is your blind side.
Yeah.
Not only that, the energies along your spine are where a lot of energy attachments grow. Is where you cannot see, and your spine is a great big emitter of, anyway, that's another story. Thank you all for being here. This will be, the recording will be on the, on our Family Energetics webpage, you know, sometime within the next day or two. 2 weeks from tonight, more of same social geometry, sort of more the, you know, we'll look at people and their postures and the spaces around them in the same way that we looked at the sphere and the cylinder and the cube. Okay.
Michael, can I ask you a quick question, please?
Please.
When is your next main official class, and which one is it? When does it start?
You know, it's Family Constellations Core Concepts. The name is changing. because I've combined energy psychology and constellation so much, I've started calling it family energetics. And so last year we called it Family Energetics Core Concepts. It's 9 weeks long. It starts about June 20th. And then it's followed by Home Altar. And the two of them are very good to do one after the other.
Okay, I just needed it for scheduling. Thank you.
And I mean, I think, Sandy, don't we have the times and dates on the website about that?
Yes, I just posted the link
Okay.
into the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not good at advertising. I'd rather not do it at all, you know. Kat, thank you. It's wonderful that you were able to be here.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm glad that you came from a happy meeting. Can't beat that. All right, so thank you all. Sandy, you want to stop the recording?
Okay.